Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of VGB's podcast. It's episode 2. I am sitting here in a Los Angeles hotel room on Thursday afternoon, probably evening where most of you are, right before SGF starts. SGF is on Friday. That is tomorrow as of this recording. And a lot's already kind of been announced. A lot has already been rumored to be announced. We, of course, have the Play Days event on Saturday, Sunday, Monday. This episode is going to be a little bit different, really different. Nikki is so busy this week with Giant Bomb stuff, so this is more of an intimate, quiet conversation with myself in a hotel room. I hope you'll forgive me. I just want to kind of talk for a little while. It won't be a super long one. We're going to get back to something resembling a normal episode next week, with a lot of conversations for people at SGF. Most people started rolling in today. We'll start to actually hang out and talk about stuff tomorrow, but I did want to get an episode up on the feed after last week's premiere. So here I am, and it's been an interesting few days from a games perspective, and a lot of the rumors that keep getting thrown out there. Let's talk about some of those. But let's also talk about some of the actual news that we've received. I mean, one of the big news stories of this week for sure is the revelation that EA and BioWare is actually renaming Dragon Age Dreadwolf to Dragon Age the Veilguards. Nope, the Veilguard. The Veilguard. Dragon Age, the Veilguard. This has been an embattled development cycle. Very obviously has been a troubling few years for BioWare. They obviously had Anthem, which was a mess. There was a basis of, I think, a pretty good game underneath Anthem, but it was a mess, and it was something that I don't think they had a clear vision on, and then not enough of a player base to actually see some of their most ambitious plans through, which is super sad. But then it comes back to, well, what are you going to do with Mass Effect? What are you going to do with Dragon Age? For Dragon Age, let's just call it now, because there'll be some kind of free-flowing spoilers for Dragon Age Inquisition, the last entry from that franchise, which I actually liked quite a bit. One of the main characters of that game is Solus, and what was so fascinating about Solus as a companion in that game is that he was difficult. He was difficult to pin down, but he was a well-written character with a good voice actor. And it turns out in one of the DLCs that he is the elven god Finn Harel, also known as the Dreadwolf. And the Dreadwolf is a legendary figure that is not good. So you kind of, the revelation of kind of you've been traveling and trusting someone who is dangerous for the realm. It's a good setup, right? And I think they were smart to call it Dragon Age Dreadwolf for as long as they did. But this change is coming. It is official. The BioWare general manager, Gary McKay, and thanks to IGN for, I believe they're the ones that broke this first. Gary McKay explained that while Solus is, quote, very still much part of the story of Dragon Age the Veilguard, they wanted a title that actually reflected a deep and compelling group of companions. I think this is overthinking it. I think naming a game or a thing is very hard, and it's very effective and cool when a group can come up with a name that sounds unique, that sounds exciting. And in this case, referring to something that I think fans of the franchise are really excited about. And what this change tells me is that they don't want you to think about that. They actually don't want you to look up Dreadwolf when you search for this game, because then a normie is going to figure out that they might have to play something else before they get into this. And I guarantee the ethos of EA and BioWare today is such that they are obsessed with making sure that every single fan can pick this up and play it without a lot of friction. And I understand that that's important. We saw a lot of discourse during Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and to a slightly lesser extent Remake, where people are like, man, do I have to play Remake? Do I have to play the original? Do I have to play Crisis Core? And the answer to that question, if you fully want to understand everything, is actually yes. But they very much wanted the general public to believe that that wasn't the case, is that you could just pick it up and play it. And I struggle to imagine the kind of player that would go into Final Fantasy VII Rebirth having not played a single minute of any of those other games, or watched Advent Children even, and trying to understand what was happening in Rebirth. And I don't understand who that is. And I feel like we're kind of getting to a point where we're so desperate for extra eyeballs and hands on controllers for these games that when you have a lot of sequels and reboots and things that reference itself and reference other games, this is kind of what you end up with. If you don't invest in singular titles that stand alone, that might actually start a franchise, but you're not even thinking about that. You're just thinking about something that can bring awareness to the development that you've done and a game that you've made, and it can stand alone. If you're not investing in that, then you're investing in things that have to reference other things. And we've seen this with the MCU, and we've seen this with other franchises. And I think you're seeing it with Star Wars right now, where everything is coming so fast and it all references something else. And you kind of have to have this backbone of knowledge to get every single in joke. And I'm tired of that. I'm simply tired of that. So it's a fascinating thing to see BioWare. It's been many years since Inquisition came out, so I'm sure that's also weighing on them. It's been many years since that game came out. They don't want people searching for Dreadwolf to find that they have to kind of be up on some other stuff in order to play this. And so they changed it to Veilguard. I understand from a little bit from a brass tacks perspective, I kind of understand it. But you've also dealt with, 2 years or so of everyone thinking that this game was Dragon Age Dreadwolf. And people are searching for Dragon Age Dreadwolf, and they're excited about something called Dragon Age Dreadwolf. And now it's called the Veilguard. And the Veilguard sounds like a dental teeth straightening program. Oh, you got to take your Veilguard out before you eat. And it's not good. It's not a good title. And I thought Dragon Age Inquisition was also a bad title, because we live in a world where Inquisition really does have a real world connotation that I don't think people should be psyched about, or it sounds good. So that game could have been called a lot of different things, and it probably would have been better for it. But does it really matter after the fact? Not really. I don't think it affected much. But I know that Dreadwolf sounds cooler than Veilguard. So my immediate concern then is, if it was so important for them to change the name of the game away from Dreadwolf, what's that saying? Like, what are we saying with that? Are we saying that Solus is not a big part of this game? I mean, they're saying that he is still, but it makes me wonder if that's going to be kind of a footnote, or maybe not something you have to know a lot about going in. I don't envy them. They've got to make something that is coherent for a general audience that's coming in cold, and they've got to make something exciting for the people that have been waiting for this. I don't envy them, but I still think this is a goofy decision. Last time it was the Inquisition, now it's the Veilguard. It's always about the fellowship and its name and all that stuff. And I understand that. But to me, these games are always about that. So you don't have to couch the name of the thing in the thing that you're doing. It's okay for you to reference something else that's happening in the game. This is all kind of preferential stuff. But I also worry for this team that this is such a high stakes release for them, which IGN pointed out and a couple other places have also pointed out. It's very high stakes because it feels like trust has been lost in this team, and they've got a couple of big game releases to come out before their fate feels like it's going to be decided. And that is a grim, shitty thing to say, but I think it's probably true. With the way things have been going, it feels like they've got a couple of shots here. They've got a Mass Effect game coming out later, and they've got Dreadwolf, the Veilguard, coming out sooner. They do feel high stakes. So, therefore, to me, it feels scary that this late into the cycle, they've decided to abandon a name that pretty much everyone likes in lieu of something that I don't think sounds as good and kind of is supposed to, I believe, do some marketing lifting to a brand new player that I don't think it needs to be doing. Before next week's episode comes out, there will be a gameplay reveal. They say there will be about 15 minutes of gameplay for this game. So that's going to be very interesting. And I will be fascinated to see what that game actually looks like in motion. Very fascinated. So yeah, it's a big day for BioWare and Dragon Age heads. Yeah, it's a lot. Let's talk Suicide Squad, huh? Jason Schreier did one of his big juicy exposés that hit this morning. The Jason went out and interviewed a bunch of people that did not want to be identified because it's a lot of non-public information. It's a lot of stuff that could get them fired. But the long and the short of it is Suicide Squad killed the Justice League, lost $200 million. It was a absolutely massive investment over a decade plus, and it has failed. It has failed. And the reasons for that are manyfold, but the ones that were most mentioned were a lack of vision, changes that needed to be made that have obviously a ripple effect. The management saw early builds of this game and basically said, hey, we think this is going to be $1 billion game for us, for Warner Brothers Discovery. We think we can come in and make an absolute boatload of money on this game and continue to do it for more than 5 years. And it is already a $200 million loss. Something that also came up with something called toxic positivity that internally discouraged criticism about some of the about some of the decisions and about some of the game flow. And it was always kind of said, speaking of BioWare, BioWare is famous for always that BioWare magic. We think it's going to coalesce at the end. We think something's going to come together. We think the magic is going to bleed through into the video game that we've been making for a long time, and it will suddenly and magically be great. It will suddenly and magically be great. And that is, of course, not how video game development works. There there's so many iterations you need to make, and when you get to a game of this size and scope, iteration becomes very difficult. And when you see an early iteration of something and you point to that and you say, you stick to this and you will earn us $1 billion in revenue, that's a red flag. That's a red flag. And that's the same thing that happened here. Arcane said this Arcane magic, excuse me, I'm sorry, Arcane. This Rocksteady magic is going to bleed through and come through for us. Arcane also a studio, frankly, that has happened to. But Rocksteady has this problem. And it also had a problem that all of us on the media side and on the dev side that have made games before and shipped games, but we identified this a long time ago, the fact that this was such a genre shift from what the Arkham Asylum universe was originally built to accomplish. But Rocksteady has had a little bit of this issue. I mean, I might say I think I am in the minority of people who believe that Arkham Asylum is really the purest expression of what they were going for, and then it actually has been downhill from there. Arkham City, I think, is the critically explosive, the thing that had the biggest, most explosive intersection of sales and critical acclaim because it was a little bit more open world. It had a bit of a grander scope, and that resonated with people. And then, of course, Arkham Knight was a big, bloated mess, but it was still mostly well-received, I think. By the general public, it was still mostly well-received. I think critics rightfully did not love that game, but I think the general public seemed to like that game a lot. And then there was total shifts after that point. We're going to make the Suicide Squad game, and it's going to be a big, bright, brash looter shooter with no real vision, no real personality. It was good writing. It was good writing attached to that, but they just could not make it work. A live service game, when they have not really done that before, is not easy. Ask 343. Ask a lot of different studios that have tried to do something like this and failed. And now it's a $200 million problem for Rocksteady. And that sucks because Rocksteady, like Arcane, like BioWare, has been a massively important part of our industry from, let's say, 2000 to 2015. I mean, there's a 15-year span where I would say that those three groups in different times, Rocksteady kind of came along a little bit later, but so important, making high-quality games. Now, BioWare and Rocksteady both feel like they're on the chopping block, and of course, Arcane Austin has now been closed. Arcane Lyon is still alive and has that Blade game that they're working on. Hopefully for them, that's going to be okay. I know people seem to be excited about it. But it is it was a bummer to read this expose. I mean, Jason did a great job, but it's just such a bummer. Let's get into a couple of rumors. One is that Xbox is rumored to be releasing a handheld device. It should be announced this weekend at their showcase. We will absolutely talk about it next week on the show, if that is, in fact, what gets announced. But yes, there is a rumor that there is a Xbox handheld, which is very interesting because they kind of threw in with that Logitech device But it was clear that it was not something that Microsoft made. It was something that I kind of co-signed and said, hey, this is a good device to do some xCloud stuff on. And now apparently a handheld will be coming. We don't know much. We're going to speculate that it's probably going to be something like a Steam Deck. It might be something a bit like what Nikki and I talked about. I think it might have been on episode 0, which you can check out if you go to vgbs.com/join and join any of those tiers. You'll get a private RSS feed. But episode 0, we talked a bit about this, about how, Steam Deck feels like a thing that Xbox should have done a long time ago. They had the resources to do it, they had the operating system to do it. It felt like they could have done it, and then they just didn't. And now it feels like it's kind of too late to do it because Steam Deck has figured this out. I don't know what Microsoft could possibly announce that makes me, personally, excited enough about it to go, well, I'm going to also get one of these, because there aren't enough Xbox exclusives that I care about playing on a handheld, frankly. And if Game Pass is the main attraction, a handheld device that allows you to download games, you're not playing them over cloud, you're playing them on a dedicated device, to download Xbox games and be able to play them natively on a device. But if it is Game Pass connected, it has to be always connected to the internet to make sure you can actually play those games. A bit like what Nintendo Switch Online is like now. If you leave a Wi-Fi area and you're in the middle of a Nintendo Online game and you lose that signal, it's basically going to recheck if you're a Nintendo Online member, and it's going to run that and say, well, we can't really check that right now, so you're not going to play the game anymore. Steam Deck does not have this issue. You can take it and play it like it is a local device. You do not have to have that stuff connected to anything in order to play it. Of course, it kind of depends on what it is. If you're trying to play something online, that's different, but you know what I'm trying to say. I do not want to play a single-player game on a device that absolutely has to be connected to the internet. And Xbox's ethos right now is you must be connected to the internet. So for me, this is very personal for me, that's a no-go. But it is an interesting piece of timing, right? Steam Deck seems to have made its move. There is no announcement of a new Steam Deck yet. The OLED is still pretty fresh. Those changes were huge. Feels like Steam Deck has really kind of made a niche. But there are also other handhelds that people seem to be excited about, made by Odin, and even these, these kind of these Ambernick devices that are mostly emulation devices. But people are becoming more aware. There are emulators on iPhone right now that are perfectly legal to download. They're right there in the App Store, and you basically go load your own ROMs and stuff. So the tide is certainly changing on the attitudes of these handhelds that play multiple different consoles. So, but I just don't understand the need to have a dedicated one for Xbox, and that's me. But it is interesting that they are announcing this, or getting ahead of it before showing us what the Switch 2 is going to be like. So Nintendo Switch 2, we know it's coming. We know they're going to announce it at some point this year and show it off. But pretty much all we have to go on are rumors about what the dev kit does. We believe it's just a more powerful piece of hardware that is more or less the power of a PlayStation 4. That is not going to be the case for whatever Xbox handheld this is. It's going to be probably closer to an Xbox Series S. So who is this good for? Like, it's not for me, but maybe it's for you. And if it is for you, tell us about it. I mean, go to our Discord, discord.gg/VGBs, which is open and free to join for absolutely anybody, but there are extra channels for folks that are subscribers. But go there and talk about it. Some people already have talked about, why they would want an Xbox-centric handheld, and that's fine. That totally makes sense. But it does beg a lot of questions for me. I mean, obviously, I think Phil Spencer, from a business strategy perspective, has a lot to answer to here. I mean, I don't know if he does. I don't know if he takes a moment to reflect on the strategy that he built. They were really big about Xbox Anywhere, and it truly feels like they've abandoned that. Truly feels like that's something they don't care about. And two things have really factored into that. One is that they had to go under oath in that lawsuit where they were being sued by the government. And they had to basically say, hey, you know what? We're really not killing it in the cloud. We don't have any sort of cloud monopoly here. So, there's this acquisition for Activision. It's not a way to dominate cloud-based services because no one cares about our cloud. They had to basically say that under oath, which is wild. And even though xCloud works better than a lot of these systems, it just is simply not a technology I think people are actually all that interested in using right now. I think it has to be even more frictionless for that to really work. And to me, it is just a tougher threshold for most people than I think Xbox would like to believe. So are they abandoning it? Are they abandoning that total, that ethos of just like, we're putting Xbox everywhere? Because a lot of the bluster that Phil has said that we want Xbox on Switch and things like that, those things have not really come true. We know that they're going to put a few games that were first party on other consoles. We know that. But it's just, it's obviously a shift if they release a handheld that involves a native storage environment, a native playing environment, and Xbox games. If you're an Xbox head, you're psyched, right? You get to play some really nice games that you're excited about on a handheld. Sure. That's exciting. Anyway, some other rumors. We know that there's an Xbox in development, a new one. Don't know if we're going to see it, but we know that there is one. Part of all those leaks that came out, we know there's a timeline for new Xbox hardware. We know they're actively doing it, but do we see it? We think there's a new Doom game. We think there's a new Gears game. Someone asked me in the Discord about Silksong. I think Silksong is one of those things that they ought to not talk about until it is ready to go. And then they say, here it is. That's one game that I think would absolutely not lose an inch, a step of momentum if they decided to just shadow drop it. I don't think that would matter at all. I think that would be totally fine for that game. I think it would survive whatever shock to the system that would be. I think a lot of people would be very excited. I don't think people need to prepare for that release because it's still going to be cheaper than $70. It's still going to be kind of an indie experience, even though it is a highly anticipated game. I don't believe it is that important to not just shadow drop. But I do think it is a mistake if they keep talking about it without a firm release date. So I would not expect to see anything from that. We believe we'll see some stuff about Monster Hunter Wilds, right? We're already starting to see a trickle of gameplay videos and things like that. I think we will be able to get to see more of that game this weekend. I think there will be some closed door sessions where we'll get to see more Wild, so expect some reporting on that over on VGBs.com. I think we can expect to see some stuff about fighting games and their future. So will be that Street Fighter, Tekken, Mortal Kombat. We'll probably get some updates on new characters from the seasonal content and things like that. That'll be pretty exciting. We've already seen some announcements of some indie games from like the Guerrilla Collective, which is exciting. I love all these smaller games that come out. And it's exciting. I think I was most excited about a game that that I saw called Egging On, which is a weird kind of like puzzly platformer where if you fall from a great height, you're an egg and you crack. But you're kind of in these like puzzle platformy situations, trying to get to the top of a like a tower kind of thing. So it's very cool, um, and I like it. I think that seems neat. I like these little indies that we keep seeing. Um, there's a game called Double Shake, which sounds very cool. Which it sounds more like a Mischief Makers game, but it's kind of like a Tomby looking game, which kind of looks cool. There's also a Clock Tower remake slash port coming, which is pretty exciting. Um, and yeah, Night Dive actually also had a really cryptic announcement over on their Twitter account. I think it is. I think we can probably say what this is. By the time you listen to it, I think it might have been revealed anyway because they're going to talk about it on Friday's IGN Live event. But Night Dive Studios teased a new game, showed a really up close piece of concept art, and it looks an awful lot like John Carpenter's The Thing. So that would be very interesting for Night Dive to be tackling The Thing. I think that'd be very cool. They handled System Shock, which I have still not played yet. I really need to play their revamp of System Shock, which I've heard is magnificent. So I really need to get my hands on that. But yeah, some stuff has been announced already. By the time you're hearing this, there'll be some more stuff announced. There's a lot of stuff that I know that I'm going to be seeing this weekend. Can't talk about it yet, but by the time I'm looking at my embargo sheet here, by the time you hear the next episode, I think all of our embargoes except for 2 will have lifted. So there's a lot we're going to be able to talk about this time next week. A lot less to talk about before the events. Partially why we're doing kind of this intimate, quiet, loosey-goosey stream of consciousness kind of episode. So I appreciate everyone's patience. I think we are going to wrap it there. There's not a ton else to cover. I've got to get a website up. Go to vgbs.com. By the time you're listening to this, I'm hoping I've hit the big button and you can check out a bunch of really cool articles from folks like Merritt K, Imran Khan, Diego Arguello, some of the usual suspects, but also Grant Stoner, amazing accessibility writer. And I think there are some surprises to be found as well. Izzy Kestrel did a great piece for us ranking the top 10 video game Bs, which is super appropriate. So go to vgbs.com. You can follow us on socials pretty much everywhere at VGBs. That is the destination for everything. If you want to just go ahead and join the website, it is a website that is free to the public. 99% of everything that goes up on VGBs is going to be accessible to the public, unpaid, no paywalls, any of that. But we are supported entirely by your subscription. So what do you get when you subscribe? You get access to a Discord, which is already very hopping and very happy and very cool. And you'll get to have some access to special channels there. You get a merch discount. At both of our levels, you get a merch discount over on our store, which you can find on our website. And we have some cool kind of launch merch up right now, which I'm excited for you to check out. And you also get early access. So we will sometimes post like non-timely articles early so people get a crack at it if it's like a fun list or a nice investigative dive or something like that. Folks who subscribe at the Hive or Inner Hive level will get access to that. The only really difference between the Hive and the Inner Hive level, Inner Hive is a little more expensive. You get to join another group in the Discord that has my ear in terms of making big decisions with the direction of the website. You also get a link on our About page of your choosing. Of course, I'm going to vet what that is, but it's a place where you can kind of promote something that you're doing. And let's see what else. You get something else. I think that's actually a bigger discount off of merch. So that's pretty much the big difference between those two things. Your support is everything. We do not have ads on the site. We do not run ads on the site. There may be times where I sell sponsorship, or you might hear a podcast ad if you're on our public feed, but there is just nothing resembling any sort of banner ad or anything that's going to slow down or impact your browsing experience. I want to keep it that way forever. It is my intention to never put a single ad on this website that would slow down or ruin your enjoyment of VGBs.com. So I am so excited to launch this thing. Go to VGBs.com/join if you want to join the Hive. We have yearly and monthly plans. Yearly plans, you do get a fairly hefty discount. So keep that in mind as you browse and peruse. I, of course, appreciate everyone here that has been so supportive as we try to launch this thing. It has been a long time coming. I've done a lot of this stuff on my own, but I do have a ton of collaborators that I quickly want to thank. Of course, Nikki Grayson, who is my co-host for this show, their absence is going to be rare on this one. They're just so busy getting ready for Giant Bomb. A lot of Giant Bomb stuff is happening this weekend, including an appearance from yours truly. I will be on the Giant Bomb at Night couch on Saturday, June 8th. That's right, at about 9 p.m. Pacific. So if you're up and watching Giant Bomb at Night, it is such a fun show filled with folks that are in town for SGF, talking about video games, talking about life, talking about everything you can imagine. It is very loose. It is very fun. And it's just a fun place to see some of your favorite folks and mine on one couch hanging out. I'm going to be on that couch at 9 p.m. Pacific on Saturday, June 8th. So please check that out. So yeah, this is going to be the end of episode 2 officially of the VGBs podcast. Please leave a like and a subscribe, and please leave a review. Tell your friends about this podcast. It is something that we're going to be really, really investing heavily in past SGF. Next week's episode will be kind of an amalgam of a lot of different smaller conversations that happen at SGF. But the week after that is kind of when we start things in earnest. We'll be live streaming our recordings with guests. We have some amazing guests lined up for when SGF kind of winds down and VGBs kind of heats up. So we're really excited to be running a brand new website, doing something a little bit different, and doing it with a bunch of cool collaborators. I want to thank Olivia June for her amazing logo and typeface art for VGBs. Danger Little B is our little mascot, and I love Danger. Danger is incredible. I want to thank Alex. I want to thank Alex Van Aken for a lot of the amazing video assets that he created for us for our live streams and for our videos. You've probably seen some of that already over on YouTube. So Alex Van Aken's been amazing. LB Hunktears did our podcast art, which is incredible. And we've just had an amazing kind of murderer's row of great writers come on board for this first batch of freelance pieces, paid freelance pieces. And I'm very happy to have all of that up on the site. All right, folks, this is going to be the end of VGB's The Podcast, episode 2. Please enjoy SGF. We're going to have a really good time all weekend, posting stuff on the website, talking about stuff. If you are on that private RSS feed, expect some little bonus content from this weekend. You might get some raw conversations that will then eventually get edited into the main episode of the podcast next week, but you'll get some of that stuff early and a little bit unedited. So pay attention to that. All right. Until next week, folks, this has been the VGBs podcast. I'm your host, John Warren. And until next time, just keep buzzing.